he's so keen, so hungry for the ball.
He's just a ball hawk at the end of the day, isn't he?
He looks like a Klopp player. He looks perfectly suited to Anfield as an atmosphere and everything.
Hello and welcome to the Redmen TV. It's the deep dive. Josh joins me today for this one, and we are going to be talking about a defensive monster in Manuel Ugarte Ribeiro. Do you like that?
I do like that, yeah. You even got his extra little name in there as well.
His extra name, you mean his surname?
Well, Ribeiro.
I think so, yeah. It's written Manuel Ugarte Ribeiro, so I'm assuming that he's just shortened it because there's another Ribeiro who's maybe better than him, or he doesn't want to get confused with Ribena. But anyway, we're here to dive deep into Manuel Ugarte, defensive midfielder. Yeah, he's 22 years old. He's a hair's breadth under 6 foot Uruguayan. Why do you want to tell me all about him today? Because I've watched videos on him, I've looked at the stats, and I tell you what, I'm excited to talk about him.
Yeah, well, Liverpool are getting linked, aren't they, with midfielders from all over the continent, really. And this lad's one of them. I don't think he's getting linked as much as some others, though, which is I'm a little bit surprised by. But basically, I'm going to capture today why I almost want him to get linked more. I think he's very well suited to what Liverpool have suffered from this season. And we obviously need midfielders. He's a midfielder. And this season, I think Sporting is who he's played for. He's kind of replaced Matthias Nunes a little bit in the team in terms of being a regular starter.
Well, what formation are Sporting playing?
So they've been playing a 3-4-3 all season with him as one of the 2 sixes. So in terms of Liverpool's usual 4-3-3, that would be a little bit alien to him, I suppose. But in terms of what we've been doing lately, once Trent moves into midfield, at least that is when he would feel a bit more comfortable, I assume. Okay,
so in a two-man midfield, he's got another maybe a ball playing or a ball winner alongside him for Sporting. But in possession, he would suit what we're trying to do. Is that what you're trying to say?
In possession, once Liverpool get into this box midfield thing, he would suit one of the roles, yeah. In terms of how he'd look as a lone six, I'm not too sure. But yeah, he started 25 of Sporting's 30 league matches this season. And he only joined them in 2021 as well. I think he joined from one of the smaller Portuguese teams, beginning with an F, like Famalicão maybe, having previously joined from Uruguay. So he hasn't been on the scene very long. He's kind of like Diaz and Nunes in that sense, where he's just kind of burst onto the scene in Portugal. Doesn't have many minutes behind him, and
I think Liverpool have got. We talked about it last week, didn't we? About that sort of formula for working out what you could do in the Portuguese league and what it does in England. I think Liverpool have got that. Like, they've got it nailed. They feel pretty confident buying from the Portuguese. He's looking at the stats, looking at the player, and almost understanding what that could mean in the Premier League, because we've made a few signings from there now. Obviously Diaz has come from there, and Nunes as well. So, and we've seen so many players come into the Premier League from Wolves that they have the data on and stuff like that as well. So Jota obviously is a Portuguese player who spent time over there. But one of the things that I specifically want to talk about with him before we get into the sort of nuts and bolts of it all is like the eyeball test, because I think that's just as important sometimes as the stats and stuff like that. I mean, when you watch him play, he is an out-and-out destroyer. But the thing that gripped me the most was how often he was intercepting the football. Yeah. And that's like, you can't teach that really, can you? And I know it's dependent on who you're playing alongside and the formations and stuff. He's just a ball hawk at the end of the day, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. We are going to touch on his numbers, and they are quite crazy, to be honest, compared to other players who are of a similar type, maybe. But in terms of the eye test, I think one of the ways in which you can describe him, he's almost a bit like a midfield version of Nunes. And I'm not just saying that because they're from the same country, represent the same national team and stuff, both hailing from Portugal a little bit in terms of their previous clubs and stuff, but he's so keen, so hungry for the ball, covers so much ground. Sometimes it's borderline like, what are you doing? But it's intended well, if you know what I mean.
Does Kante have a little bit of that about him?
Yeah, Kante's a similar player, actually, in terms of just, when he's on it, it is like you've got an extra man in your midfield. It's like 2 players in one, really, isn't it? And Ugarte is very workhorse, very like tradition. He's proper Klopp, to be honest, in terms of what you expect from a typical Klopp midfielder, a typical Klopp player. You respect like intensity, energy, aggression, You want him to be proactive. You want him to put a foot in. And on top of that as well, he's reasonably quick as well. So which obviously helps when it comes to pressing, because if you can get over the first couple of yards quickly, like Curtis has shown lately, Curtis Jones, it can do well for you. But yeah, on the eye test, he is just that midfield dog who just loves to cover ground, and a little bit Milner, Henderson, peaky is maybe, but he probably even a bit more nuts.
What about with the ball?
With the ball, again, we can touch on this with the numbers, but he's very, like, primarily safe. There's nothing special, there's no stardust. If he is playing next to Trent would be the one offering all that as he's doing now anyway, to be honest.
But water carrier in that regard?
Yeah, he will regain the ball for you. He can keep the ball in terms of, like, dribbling, shielding the ball from opponents, a bit like Wijnaldum did.
I saw that. He likes to go past the man, and he doesn't mind letting his legs go and having a little bit of a run and stuff. But in possession, he's not a 30, 40 yard passer like Trent Alexander-Arnold. But he could be Trent's dog on a leash. Go get me the ball, son. Bring it back here, type of thing. Yeah, exactly. And let's move forwards.
Exactly. But the thing is, if you look at Liverpool's team now, do we even need another stardust passer in the team? I wouldn't say we do. I think this season, primarily, we've suffered from pressure against the ball and getting cut open. And in terms of with the ball, we haven't scored as many as previous seasons, but don't forget, Jota's been injured, Diaz has been injured, Firmino's been injured, we've been integrating Núñez, integrating Gakpo. So, and despite all that, we've still looked pretty threatening, I think, for the most part. And we've got Trent, we've still got Thiago at the club.
Van Dijk's a good passer of the ball.
Yeah, Robertson's still very attack-minded. So we've almost tipped the scale a little bit, I think, with that. So if we were to get into someone who just does primarily focus on, I'll get the ball back for you, for me, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
No, I wouldn't either. Well, let's take a look at the first visual then. And this one, you can go through this, but you've titled it, "What if Manuel Ugarte was in the Premier League?" So go through it.
Well, you mentioned before, didn't you, that in terms of numbers translating from Portugal, we have no idea what he would look like if he was in the Premier League. But I've tried to do this anyway to compare him with Premier League players, because if I compare him with the whole of Portugal, I assume most of our watchers, listeners, don't watch the Portuguese Premier League. So
yeah, no one does.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So I thought I'll compare him to Premier League players this season to just show what he's doing, basically. So this is Manuel Ugarte alongside players in the Premier League this season, midfielders only. And this is basically regaining possession. You're looking at the top 25 players there in the Premier League for regaining the ball in terms of tackles and interceptions on a per 90 basis. And every one of those players has played at least 1,000 minutes. Obviously, you've got 24 Premier League players there and one who is Ugarte. And you can see, mate,
he's miles ahead of everybody.
Absolutely in a league of his own. And João Palhinha as well, we've spoken about, I think, haven't we? And he is that defensive monster. He's regaining the ball a lot for Fulham. We like him. Casemiro gets massive credit for that. Idrissa Gueye has always been that kind of ball winner for Everton, PSG, whoever you want to call it.
And just for any of the listeners out there, he's on ball regaining possession about 7 times a game. Paulinho's on about 5.5. Then there's a small drop off to the others. Gueye, Casemiro, Soumare, Adams, and Ndidi, about 5. He is way out on his own in this regard, isn't he? Like, there's no gap on that screen that we're looking at now that is anywhere near as big as the gap from first to second.
Yeah, no, it's...
And second to 24th might be about the same size as the gap between first and second.
I was just thinking that,
Which is huge.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what we would call an outlier, to be honest. He is completely on his own, and if you look at some of the players who you would deem to be defensively good in terms of regaining the ball for you, like a Moises Caicedo, for example, if you look at how the two compare, there is a sizable gap between the two, and it's worth saying as well, Sporting Lisbon dominate the ball. Sporting Lisbon are a dominant side in Portugal. This isn't him playing for a relegation threatened side, so he's got to do a lot of defensive activity or whatever. Anana for Everton does a lot of defensive work for them. Declan Rice is getting tipped for like £100 million by David Moyes. But Ugarte...
Three more tackles and interceptions per 90 basically than Declan Rice. Our top player on there is Thiago Alcantara, and it's about not far off 3 ahead of him as well.
Is that surprising?
No, I think it would be if you didn't look at the numbers.
Yeah, for the man on the street, like something. Yeah, I agree. I think Fabinho was just like around 30s or something like that, so he just about missed out on a cut. I mentioned last week that Jordan Henderson is much lower when it comes to this sort of thing than you would expect. He doesn't, in terms of tackles and interceptions, it's not as much his game as you would think.
He always, for me, whenever I'm watching Jordan, he's always putting pressure on the guy and making it difficult. And it might result in the next person being able to get the ball back with Jordan. It never seems to be him that actually gets the ball back by comparison to some of the other midfielders and stuff.
Yeah, but that captures him there. I mean, again, it remains to be seen how those numbers would be impacted if he then moved to England and he's against basically better players. But that is interesting in terms of like, he's doing that in I think the 6th best competition in Europe. So it's basically...
I think technically it's the 5th now. I think it overtook the French league, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, it is interesting, and it's enough to make him kind of like leap out the page. I mean, that's pair 90, and if we don't do pair 90 and we just do totals, again, he's top of Portugal by some distance. And I suppose now we can move on to what he does with the ball.
Yeah, so another viz here.
Yeah, so this is, again, comparing him to Premier League players. Again, everyone on the board there is minimum 1,000 minutes. And on the bottom axis, we've got progressive passes per 90. And on the side axis, we've got pass completion in terms of a percentage. So that kind of captures there the players who move the ball forward a lot and the players who keep the ball a lot as well. The master of that really is Rodri, who's doing both to a really high level. You also have Enzo Fernandez, who's doing that but to a really high level. Jordan Henderson as well is probably better than people would expect there, I assume. Kevin De Bruyne, moving the ball forward a lot, not so much keeping the ball.
Irish passes.
Yeah, taking risks on the ball on that.
And all that says to me, Josh, is where he is, which is about 92% pass completion on the season.
Yeah.
4.5 progressive passes per game. Whereas Rodri's sort of 90 plus pass completion, but 8.5. It says to me he's a good passer, but he's a safe passer.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is exactly what we were saying from the eyeball test as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think if he's not slightly ahead of Rodri, they're virtually identical in terms of how often they keep the ball. And again, a lot of Rodri's passes, if you think about it, they play such a slow pace and side to side, and that Rodri's not under pressure really with a lot of those passes.
But has the ability, crucially, to be able to break it out when necessary during the game. Where was Kurt Jones on this one? Because I was looking for him then. I was expecting him to be obviously quite high in the pass completion. He'd be up by the 90%, I'm assuming, over the course of the season. And I'd actually expected him to be probably around about where Jordan Henderson was. I don't know if there was something on the minutes played that's...
I think that is the issue, yeah. He hasn't played enough minutes, simply. But if he was on there, 90% pass completion.
Yeah, so around the Rodri, Manuel Ugarte, higher than everybody else.
And in terms of progression, about 6.
So yeah, he'd be around...
So he'd be just above Gundogan, ish, which is solid. You know, that's solid possession performance, that really. But in terms of Ugarte, that is the picture that you're kind of painting there in terms of a player who will relentlessly keep the ball for you and just never really loses it. So you get a lot of control from him. But you maybe don't get the line-breaking passes, the stardust. But again, going back to Liverpool's issues this season, I don't think that's a problem. I think that's fine. And I think he profiles data-wise. If you look at what we've just showed his defensive numbers there. This is his kind of on-ball numbers. I think he basically paints himself as almost ideal to what Liverpool have suffered from this season. Although with this new switch, this box midfield, this 3-2-5, slightly less suited, I would say, to him being the ultimate target, if you see what I mean. Do you agree? Or?
Yeah, no, I can totally understand what you're saying there. I wanted to move on to the numbers, actually, because I've got them up on my iPad now. We're on FBref, which is pretty much the best in the business for this type of thing. And you can see in the passing, in terms of passing and pass completion and all that type of stuff, he ranks really highly in all of this stuff. It's on the full scouting report if you are trying to follow along at home. But if you actually scroll down to see where he's absolutely unbelievable, his shot creating actions defensively is, you know, top 1% there. But when you get down to his defensive statistics, I mean, he's top 1% in tackles, top 1% in tackles won, top 1% in tackles in the mid-third and the attacking third, top 1% in dribblers tackled, dribbles challenged, top 1% in tackles and interceptions. I mean, this is crazy. I've actually never seen a player who's top 1% in all of these things all of the time. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. And if we continue to go down, you can see again, tackles 199, so top 1%, interceptions top 2%, ball recoveries top 1%. He is absolutely dominating in almost every defensive category for a midfielder. That's crazy.
Yeah, he is kind of the ultimate safety net, really. And if you're looking at Van Dijk this season potentially and thinking like he looks a bit human and stuff, he looks like the kind of player where if you was to put him in front of a defence, out of nowhere, it transforms how good your centre-backs look, and it transforms your ability to retain the ball high up the pitch. You sustain attacks, you generate waves of attacks and stuff, and fires get extinguished quickly. But as I said, you know, Liverpool being this data-driven club when it comes to recruitment and stuff, obviously that kind of remains to be seen a little bit this summer, considering Ian Graham's leaving, Michael Edwards isn't there anymore, Julian Ward's getting off. But as a data profile, I mean, that's literally tailor-made in terms of what we've seen Liverpool suffer from this season.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've seen that dip in Fabinho. I do think he's starting to maybe kind of come through that now, but still long-term concerns maybe for me. The last couple of games he's been pretty good and stuff, but I think the one thing I will say is whether I think Liverpool should sell Fabinho or not, I now believe Fabinho is upgradable.
Yeah,
and a year ago it didn't. And I think you should always look to upgrade where you can. And there are positions in this squad, in this 4-3-3 formation, with the three at the back and the 2-2-3, I think there are upgradable positions. I want to give Robbo the opportunity to prove that he can do it and translate his skill set into that left-sided centre-half hybrid sort of role. Not 100% sure that he's got that in him, but I think he deserves the time and the space to be able to work on that. And I think Jurgen's affording him that at the moment. I think Fabinho's upgradable. I think Canate right now, maybe not if you're looking at potentially Andy Robertson replacements in this formation. I think the two sort of 10s are upgradable, and I think the forwards are probably absolutely fine. So we're looking at these two midfielders in the 10 and this midfielder here probably to replace Fabinho, with the easily upgradable players for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think I said to you a couple of weeks back, if I'd never watched Liverpool this season and it was my job to basically assess how to fix the team, the 6 would be a big concern for me without looking at what he's done in the past, which has been brilliant. This season he has just looked shattered, and he's looked behind the 8 ball and chasing shadows and things like that. One of the issues with the way Liverpool are setting up now and this new look system, we don't know if it's going to be kept or not, but if it is kept and you look at these roles, Ugarte at best is suited to the Fabinho role and kind of nothing else really. And I don't know if that's a problem. I don't think he could do either of the 10 roles personally. I mean, I don't know. I don't think he could personally. Well, he obviously can't do the inverted fullback role.
No, but I think one of the things, if we switch this back to a 4-3-3 formation and we just drop him in there and you put Ugarte in there. Now, there have been a couple of players who can play the 6 and the 8. Jordan Henderson's one of them. In fact, they might be the only one. James Milner could do the 6 and the 8. Whether you think he can do it now is a topic for another time, of course. Wijnaldum was able to do it on occasion. But for me, what I'm sort of driving at here is this role here, I think, is one of the only areas in the team that you have to be a specialist for. Yeah. I think to get the absolute best out of them. We like the versatility, and Klopp likes the versatility in the front line. I think Klopp likes the versatility to play either side if you can. But that is a specialist position. You should be thought of completely different to the rest of your squad makeup, where you do want people who can play in multiple positions, because you might want to have a small squad, 17, 18 players to take you through. For that one there, your backups might be versatile, but your specialist has to be your first teamer.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I hadn't thought of it like that actually, but when you think about it, I suppose it is almost a bad thing if your 6 is versatile, really, because you got to ask yourself, why is he versatile as a 6? Because if you think of the best who've played it, I mean, I don't know, Casemiro, Busquets,
Makelele.
Yeah, they don't. Even Pep Guardiola, you know, they don't really move. That's the fixed axis of the team. And Rodri, you know, I mean, Rodri played as a centre half, to be fair, in their World Cup, but he's like 6'3", so he can't do that. But one of the issues with Ugarte doing this, though, I mean, we've just touched on Sporting play a 3-4-3 this season, so he's used to playing in the 2. So that's alien to him. But on top of that, people have always thought that Kante is this defensive mid, as in there. Kante at his prime never really played
Kante
there.
goes wherever the fucking ball is.
And if we look at Ugarte, this dog who loves to just harry, if you put him there, mate, and he's just off,
Which I see where you're getting at here, which is why you think he might need that guy next to him.
Yeah, he would need it.
It's because he's going to fucking go sniff out a ball anywhere on the football field, and you're going to need somebody else there. And then I suppose it's what are your 8s going to do, or your 10's going to do? Are they going to drop in and recover and help with the positioning and that type of thing? Or are you just going to win the ball back out of the pitch, heavy metal footballer, and go from there?
Yeah, I'm not sure he's a lone 6 for that reason, just because he's so keen to go and get the ball for you. If you put him as a 6, the lone 6 is just a holder, essentially, holding the fort. I do think, though, if we was to play the standard 4-3-3, he could probably do that.
The left side of the field.
He could do that to
the Wijnaldum.
A similar level to Wijnaldum and Henderson over the past few years in terms of up and down the pitch, but when it gets to the edge of the final third, maybe he gets a bit of a nosebleed and stays here a little bit. But predominantly in terms of like regaining the ball for you and stuff, doing a lot of that. But as a lone 6, I don't know if I like that. But it just, I don't know, a lot of it.
Is there a way here where Jürgen sort of hinted at it? We're going to do this sort of 3-2-2-3 or whatever we're calling it now, the inverted right back or whatever, who cares? Is there a way where we can work on this in and out of possession?
This was going to be a topic, wasn't it? For this week, potentially, where we just do it permanently. Possibly.
Because that solves a few of the issues. And I think one of the things that I was sort of thinking about with regards this, right, is I think one of the problems at the moment is the screen's not good enough. I think if you want to play a 3 at the back like this, I think a lot of the time you want to get extra width in somewhere. You want to make it a little bit more difficult. Now, that's why I think we're going to the 4 at the back at the moment, because it's too easy to get down the outside of us. But also the screen in the middle might be able to help out in that regard. And maybe you could do something like that instead. But again, you're into a position where Konate's not really comfortable. Maybe it does suit a Joe Gomez a little bit more type of thing. But that for me is the struggle with getting this into an outer possession. There's just not the width there. The gap between the centre halves becomes too big. Somebody's almost got to drop in at all times. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, this is the kind of shape that it's basically made so that you can press in the final third. That's kind of what it's for. You know, it's you've got your attacking bank of 5 who will go and chase the ball relentlessly.
And a high line.
And then you've got your safety net of ideally 5 players there. There's your press, there's your safety net almost. And if you're going to permanently defend in that shape, obviously, say for example last night against Fulham, there was moments for a lot of the second half where they were obviously pushing for an equaliser and attacking and things like that, and Liverpool were forming a bit of a low block really.
You can't do that. You can't. Somebody has to go there.
Exactly.
The way we're currently set up, and I think that's the difficult thing for Jürgen at the moment. And it's obviously something that Pep and Arteta have thought about, which is why they've kind of got the centre halves in there. But they're still doing it that way as well. They're not defending in that way. They're looking for the stability, but they're looking for the obviously added verve that your side gets from having that extra man in the middle of the park. So maybe we'll think about that a little bit more and come up with something in the next few weeks and stuff. But for you, is it likely that Liverpool are going to be looking at Ugarte, or is it dependent on whether they decide Fabinho is not good enough?
It's tricky because I think, again, if you look at Liverpool's problems this season, last time I checked, Liverpool were 3rd in the league for XG, 11th in the league for XG against. Any data scientist, any data-driven guy would look at that and think, right, to get better, we have to fix the defence, naturally. And anyone, again, who's looking at data and midfielders should see Ugarte leaping out the page as a solution. If you then look at his game and the eye test and all that, he looks like a Klopp player. He looks perfectly suited to Anfield as an atmosphere and everything. But then you have to consider this new shape, the fact that we're now incorporating 10s and we don't really have any 10s at the minute, really. We've got Henderson playing up there and it's not really particularly suited. So I honestly don't know. I think a lot of it would depend on what Klopp's assessment of Fabinho is. And we've said this a few times, haven't we, in terms of the summer business, a lot of it does depend on is Fabinho finished or not, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we're going to talk about on our Redmen Plus show this week actually is Liverpool's high line. It's something that I think I've noticed over the last sort of couple of weeks, but more specifically while we've been in this sort of three at the back with centre midfield role, is that, you know, Liverpool have had a high line, but I don't think they're quite suited to it yet. We're still getting exposed. And I think when Jürgen said in his press conference the other week, he was talking about stability, was almost his word of the week. I don't think we're there yet with the stability side of things. It's offering us stuff going forwards, but the stability, which I think is why the system was introduced, isn't quite there. So that's what we're going to talk about on Redmen Plus this week. So you can join us over there, redmenplus.com. You need to sign up as a club captain or a club legend. You'll be able to watch these shows and everything else that we do over there. Promises to be a good show. So please, if you've liked the video, then like the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Sapping everyone, hope you enjoyed that show. If you want to get discounts off redmenmerch.com, if you head over to redmenplus.com and become a club legend, you get 20% off the products over on redmenmerch.com. So yeah, get yourself some Boss Liverpool gear, get yourself even more Boss Liverpool content, become a Redmen Plus club legend today.